I'm Jim Setzer, and this is Images by Design Studios. This is another one of our photographers' workshops, and tonight I've brought a couple of friends into the studio, and we're going to talk about our favorite picture of 2017. Now, with a whole new year in front of us, it's a good time to kind of reflect back, find that best favorite picture out of our set, and kind of talk about it as a group. And I thought I'd ask everybody to talk a little bit about the picture. What was the inspiration for the image? How did you go about finding or thinking about and composing the shot? Technically, how did you shoot the picture? How did you post-process it? Those kinds of questions, so we can kind of go through each of those in turn and share around the group what's going on there. Sound good? All right. I'm going to start with the picture I've chosen. I'll get that back up on the screen while the next one talks. But this isn't necessarily my best picture of 2017. Most of my really good pictures are client photos, and they're private, and some of them aren't safe for work. But I really like this shot right here, and you can see that's up on the wall, that young lady, because it's got a really interesting story for a photographer. So a client of mine was coming to the studio to pick up her print package, and she said, "Hey, can my friend come along when I pick up my prints, because she's thinking about starting up her own home studio and wants to pick your brain a little bit." And I said, "Sure." And she comes in and we start talking a little bit about studio lighting and key to fill light ratios and lighting positions and a couple things, and she was asking just a lot of really good questions. I said, "I'll tell you what, let's just throw up some lights and we'll take a couple of quick shots." And she happened to have this absolutely perfect makeup job. I mean, she said this is her daily makeup. She must spend 4 hours in front of a mirror. But so I did. I brought up a couple of studio strobes and showed her how I set my starting ratios up, and then took those shots and said, "This is pretty neat." And I said, "I'll tell you what, let's just throw another light in here." So I grabbed a speed light for the hair light and put that right back behind her shoulder there, and fired that off, and that looked pretty good after I dialed it down so it wasn't blowing the thing out. And then finally I said, "Yeah, this white background's a little bit, needs a little something." So I just took another speed light and put a little blue gel on it and dropped the power way down to get this kind of lavender fill in the background. Shot it, done, and the whole thing was 10 minutes, just kind of impromptu. It all just kind of came together, and it shot and turned out great, and people loved the picture, and so I thought I'd share that with the group, and figured it's good.
It's cool that it was spontaneous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it helps if you have your home studio lights and they're just set up. If you had to spend an hour dragging backdrops and stands out of a closet somewhere and standing it up, that would have probably never would have happened, right?
Well, some people can learn by reading, and most people, I think, probably do better with practical. So that's what you gave her.
Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, here's actually how this is done, and she happened to look good. So
yeah,
bang, it's a win-win.
Yeah, she wasn't a hard subject to shoot at all. Yeah. Any other questions on mine?
I've got one or two pictures. I had a young, and her, Kat,
Yeah.
young lady.
Mm-hmm.
We goofed around, and I kind of introduced her a little bit to cameras and that kind of thing. And she was interested in photography, but as it turned out, she ultimately became more interested in modeling than the photography part of it. And she came over one day, and we just set up stuff in my dining room and had a little backdrop and had her do some flippy stuff with her hair and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I got some pictures of her that I'm really, I mean, they're not your level of stuff, but I mean, I got some pictures of her that I'm really, really pleased with. I mean, she looks nice, and we just had fun together. It was just it was a relaxed thing. I wasn't tense. Nobody was paying me. There was no pressure there. It was just goof around. She was learning a few things. I was learning a few things. It was just a really good experience, And we got some decent pictures out of the thing, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, home studio is, I think a lot of people should, if you've never tried it, it's not really that expensive to get into. You can get a cowboy studio pop-up set and a couple of hot lights and get started with it, and that's how I did it. a couple of years back and just started working with it and, you know, started playing with the lights and figuring all that. And it's a great way to learn off-camera flash, because, you know, you can take pictures of anything around your house, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be a person. You can start with product photography and just do that kind of stuff and just work through it, and it's great. Then when you get back out in the world, and then you have probably a stronger understanding of light and how you can modify and shape the light, because you've had this controlled environment that you've had a chance to work in. It works great.
And there are tons of videos on YouTube about setting up a small home studio, or using your garage or a spare room or whatever.
Yeah.
So no end to the resources there, and no matter what your budget is, you can manage something with it.
Yeah, and it doesn't take a huge amount of space. It really doesn't.
A little roll of seamless paper is what, $20 or something. I mean, you know, you can do some good stuff for a little money.
Yeah, I made, years ago, in Rivers, and I left my with it, I made stands to hold, background paper out of 2x4s.
Yeah, there you go.
4 feet, a big dowel through the top.
PVC pipe is, man, you can do all kinds of stuff with that.
I
And
used
there,
to do it.
yeah, there was a guy on the internet that had his little trick was stick in a can, he'd get an old coffee can, put like a 1x2 in it, and then fill it with Quikrete. In 30 minutes, you got a weighted, you know, something you just move around. I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff if you just use a little bit of ingenuity, you know.
Let me ask you about your photos. What kind of post-production you have done there?
For that one,
Yeah.
almost nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, it was literally just a crop. I went with a kind of that Peter Hurley cut into the hairline crop on the top, brought it in on the sides to kind of just bring her to the center. I liked it cutting into that one shoulder. It just kind of worked for this particular shot. So literally, it's just tweak the exposure in a crop, and that was all that was done to that.
This guy on the internet calls those topless headshots, probably to get views on his thing, but you know, I mean, that's the whole deal, is you kind of chop them at the hairline, a little above, and do the tight shot, and those are kind of trendy looking things for corporate headshots and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. Okay, well, this monitor is not behaving out here, so we could just share along on here, I guess.
It's kinda hard to put the rest of my head back across the camera.
Yeah, that is true.
Leave your options open.
Mm-hmm.
Well, digital file sizes now are so big, you can go pretty wide, you give yourself a lot of room, and then pull in on it and not lose a tremendous amount of resolution. Unless you're gonna print the side of the wall.
Right. On the YouTube, I'll superimpose these pictures so people can see them. So let's go over to Daniel, so that he's the next one on my list. Tell us a little bit about your favorite shot.
So I was in Cleveland, Ohio for that picture. I picked up a good friend of mine, and we was driving around. It was like, well, let's check out a place that we've never been to. So we went to this natural reserve type area that was a part of Cleveland. You could see the downtown city's skyline. And I went out there, and I was like, I like this shot. I went back, grabbed my camera, went back to that place, and that white wall is actually a breaker wall that they fine you if you're on top of that wall. So I was like, well, I'm gonna make this quick. So I set my tripod up, put a 14 to 24 lens on there, and I took like 3 or 4 shots, and I was like, well. And I sat there for a while. I was like, I don't see the shot I want, and so I moved up a little more. And my friend's like, you better hurry up. And I was like, okay, give me a second. And I shot the shot one last time. So I took a total of 5 different shots. And the last one was my best one. And I jumped off the wall, saw a state trooper. He looked at me, we gave each other a nod, and he drove off, got into the car, went home, processed one that night. And it had like a grayish type sky to it. And I was like, I wonder what it would look like with like a little orange type sky to it. Because I remember to my left it was orange. And so I just took the orange from the other picture and drug it over. And that's why that sky looked like that. And I was like, I like this one way better. It was 14 degrees. Really cold.
Yeah, got a nice sky there. So when you said you pulled in the oranges, were you using just the HSL sliders in Lightroom, or did you come in with a
I'm not there
graduated
yet with
filters
that.
or?
I was playing around with the picture, the other one with the orange skies, and I just took the colors and tones, and I just copied them, and I drug them over to this picture.
Oh, okay.
Which pulled the same colors and tones to this one also.
Mhm.
Because they had like, for some reason the sky stopped about 20 feet to the left, which is really weird. Like I figured it would come all the way across, but it was so cold that the temperature was weird
Mm.
for that day. So overall, I enjoy that picture a lot, and a lot of other people enjoy that picture also. I actually want to blow that picture up, put that one on metal, and that one actually probably be my first one that's going to go in my house. Well, the second one is going to go in my house. It's all metal print.
Yep. Good.
It was processed in Lightroom, and for the most part, strictly Lightroom, because I didn't play around in Nix. I tried it in Nix to try to add a little tone to it, but I didn't like the way it came out. It was like too weird looking, so I just put it straight to Lightroom only. And I'm not Photoshop, I didn't really play around with it, because normally I just don't, if it's something if I can't fix it in Lightroom, then I'll play around Photoshop, but that one's strictly Lightroom, and I enjoy that picture a lot, and it seems like a lot of people like that picture.
Great.
Anybody got any questions? Thank you.
Is the crop right straight on a camera, or do you have to pull it in a little bit?
I pulled up the bottom to get rid of footprints.
Oh.
Because people was walking way out there to the edge, so the footprints was bugging me too much in my head, so I just cropped the bottom a little bit so that way you don't see the footprints as much. But all them little trails all the way through, there's all people walking all the way out to the edge, which is highly illegal.
Okay. Neat.
Kind of like climbing up on the wall, illegal like that.
Yeah, it's illegal.
Let me switch gears and ask you to talk about the prints you brought, and I'm going to try to get this thing, get up on the big display again for the next picture.
Well, there's 4 or 5 prints in there, all are background of this print, but Neil knows about this. My wife and I travel a lot in RV, and I'm from Iowa, and I have relatives out there in Colorado and everything. But that's not why we went to this town. This town is in east central, pretty far east, Kansas, and it's the name of the town is Cottonwood Falls. Right near it, only a mile or 2 away across the river, is a town called Strong City. They're both maybe, Cottonwood Falls might be 1,500 people, Strong City, close, same size. Tough towns, old towns. Strong City is more industrial in character, and Cottonwood Falls is ranching and a little more upscale. But they're famous for, this is a spot in the heart of the ground zero, if I could, for the high grasses of the plains of the Kansas, where in the 1800s, Texas ranchers driving their herds to Kansas City would graze there and get their cattle 5 or 8 pounds a day fatter on the way to market. Grandma and Blue String, the grass was so high that in the era when the Indians only lived there, they would stand on the back of the horses to see how high the grass would be. And it's also the Flint Hills area, which is the geological makeup of the whole place, and it's sort of a low spot. It's a beautiful place to grow crops and raise grasses and feed cattle, but when it floods, those towns down there are flooded numerous times over the previous centuries. People know it and they still live there. And how I found out about the place was, came across a book called Prairie Earth. And it's a big, thick thing that would take months to get through unless you're reading it constantly. And it's a historical documentary about the whole region. And a guy named William Least-Heat Moon, who's a professor in the University of Minnesota, wrote the book 20 years ago. He's still alive. And it's about that whole region. And he goes back to prehistoric times when covered with water and brings you all the way up to the modern, current era. He must have gotten a big grant from somebody because he lived there on and off for months and years writing this book. And the book is so moving with this history that I said, I gotta go visit this place, and that's how we ended up there. And we've been there about 3 times now. I've stayed there on a motorcycle trip in the town, Don and I have stayed there together. And it just so happens the town of Cottonwood Falls has a courthouse that, according to my sources, is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, still operating original courthouse built in the early 1800s. And in the
Well.
inside of the place, this is just a snapshot outside. The inside of the place is incredible. You could tell there was a lot of money in this region because rich farmers moved in there years ago. And you might say, well, there's rich farmers everywhere, but this is particularly so here. I mean, you see estates that look like something straight out of the richest parts of Texas, the richest parts of around Ocala, Florida, big ranches and stuff. Just incredible places. So there's big money there and old money, and still persists to this day. This is an interior shot of the one of the shots I took of the interior of the courthouse. This is the original. This was built in like 1840s and 50s. It's wood, all the trim and all the other.
Wow,
good.
beautiful work.
It's a handheld shot with a Fuji X Pro 1 available light. I crop when I shoot, and I don't process. I just shoot KFA. That's my deal. And then the town is very interesting. Little town. It's one big main street with little shops on either side, and some of which are still quite viable. And here's a shot. There's a shot of downtown of an antique store.
Nice.
And then I took a drive out in the country one afternoon and saw some animals south of town on a gravel road. There were a bunch of cattle that I disturbed by my presence.
Mm-hmm.
And the picture that I really am fond of was shot that same day, just down the road a little bit from it. Now this is not doctored or treated for color. This is the colors that were there.
Wow.
And that's the shot I shot it with a little 23 millimeter lens on a Fuji X100.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That's pretty horse and rich colors.
And it's got a lot of, I like the color in it, and I guess what I'm trying to say is I like the way I framed it. It turned out pretty good. The horse is looking at me like, what the hell are you doing here?
Who's this
He
guy?
makes these prints himself.
Yeah, I printed this at home.
You have like a dye sub printer?
I have a Canon, a fairly, moderately priced Canon, but it does a really nice job. If you can afford to buy the ink for it.
Yeah.
It takes, I think it has 8 different ink cartridges.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm not being honest, I actually worked the first set of ink cartridges for about a year. And a lot of detail. That's just a 16 megapixel camera.
Mm-hmm.
They make it in a 24 megapixel now. Can't see spending the money.
Wow.
Yep.
That's cool.
Good detail in it, huh?
Very good detail.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I love horses.
Those blues and the greens are just great. Color
Kind of
values are
cloudy
perfect.
in there,
Yeah,
and you
and-
have a sun
Yeah,
coming
the
from
sun,
this
no, the
side.
sun was off
Like
to the
something
right, to the
Yeah.
southwest.
Mhm.
That's the sky right there that day. This is only about 3 miles from town out in the country. I mean, there's no hard surface road going into the town. That's how remote it is. So
All right, Neil, let's talk about your picture. I love this portrait.
Well, I didn't have a chance to do much my preferred photography, black and white film with a view camera. But I try to get as much practice as I can, and so I've been setting up one of these pop-up studios at various meetups and this one was, like that, was at the School of the Arts and Gallery up there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't realize, till after I'd done, because, sometimes I photograph a lot of people, you know, hundreds or more, and I only have time usually, for 2 or 3 exposures, and that was the way that I've been trained years ago. People only have a limited window, especially amateurs, you know, which they can be comfortable in. If you try to direct them too much or work too much, you lose them. But this couple, the young lady was bringing something to the meeting called augmented reality, and she
Mhm.
had a smartphone, and she had some artworks that she had done,
Mhm.
paintings and so on, and if you looked at the painting through with a smartphone, then all this other stuff came up.
Right.
It was it's programmed to recognize certain patterns, and other uses for that can be for people walking around in a new city or taking a tour or walking tour or something.
Mhm.
They can use that program. They point their smartphone at a building. The program recognizes that street scene and points out restaurants, or it could be, you know, advertising a special or bring some history.
Yep.
And so on to it. Eventually, you know, it'll have facial recognition, and you can you know, point your device at a person, and it'll bring up, you know, whatever they can on them. It's kind of bizarre and intrusive in a way.
Yeah.
It's augmented reality. It's not real reality. I mean,
Right.
I'm interested in the kind of reality that only the camera can reveal,
Mhm.
not something that's changed and switched around later.
Right.
So, but it just fell into place with these two. The only thing, his call was a little bit wild there, but I think they looked nice in a nice light, and there was no reflection on her glasses, and
Mhm.
it really looked like something that.
Is that a background you made?
No, I have made backgrounds like that, but that one I bought.
Okay.
It's a Muslim background. I bunch it up and stick it in a bag. That's why it's got a lot of little tiny
Crinkles in it.
crinkles
Yeah,
that,
design
give
it.
it a texture.
Right.
And depending on how far, they're pretty close to it, but it's big, and if I brought it further back and used a more open stuff and threw it out of focus, you can
Mhm.
do a lot with it. And then I lit it with just one big softbox. It's off to the camera left.
Mhm.
And then I had a little a snoot from behind, which is just like basically a pipe that's on the flash head to separate it from the background and give a little hair light.
Mhm. Yeah, I really like the lighting because you can see he's got a nice, you know, the key light coming in from the left. He's got a nice shadow and fall off on him. A lot of times when you do that with a couple that are that close, she'll end up in shadow, but she's not in this picture. She's just far enough, leaning forward just enough that you've caught it really, really well here. I think that's great.
I was fortunate to work early in my career with some really masterful photographers, and they showed me a lot of the tricks in this. And the one is that when you have a couple like that, and in the first place, I always light from camera left. I never light from camera right. And when I do landscapes and so on, I always try to have the light coming from the left. This is an old Renaissance painting thing that the eye always looks back into is attracted to the light, so you can trap the eye on the image. With people, you can only look at one eye at a time. and usually we look at the right eye. So, we wanna have the right eye illuminated and the left eye in shadow, less
Mhm.
emphasized. And, if you can see this, if you make or you see a photo in a magazine or on the internet, now it's easy because you can bring them into a program and flip them. If someone is lit from camera right, which a lot of amateur photographers do because they're right-handed, they're holding the light or the light stand in their right hand while they move around, so they light up the person's left eye. And, that's predominant. And it's bothersome to us psychologically because we look at the right eye for clues into what the person's thinking and feeling and so on. And, you know, boxers, a right-handed boxer conceals his right eye. He leads with his left hand and protects his right eye because the right eye to an experienced boxer can give away the next move.
Hmm.
And in some cultures, the left eye is considered
I
the evil.
never knew that, and I was still a good boxer.
Just watching it. Yeah. It shows your opponent well. In some cultures, the left eye is considered the evil eye. And I had a friend that went to Jamaica, and he said that he was in rough part of town. He said he sees these big guys who come up and they look at him with the left eye, raise their eyebrow, and it's considered the evil eye.
Hmm.
So we don't like to have anyway, so that's the way I always like from camera left. And if you go in this photographer that I worked for years ago said, go in the art museum. He said, look at all the Renaissance paintings.
Yeah.
He said, then come back and tell me, he said, he says, well, you know, about the light. And you know, I learned a lot of things, it came from, you know, it's an angle and this and that, but, and he never told me because he was not the kind of guy who would give away secrets. But eventually I found out that almost every single Renaissance painting is lit from camera left. The light falls on the right eye, and the left eye is in shadow. And when you setting up a couple like this, you put the man on the camera left, and so he's more sculptured by the light. See, he's in a more Rembrandt, you know, portrait lighting.
Yep.
But then she stands and looks into the light, so the light on her is flat and glamorous.
Mhm.
And it's just a.
Kind of like what we were talking about before. Yeah. Mhm. Neat. Yeah. Beautiful shot.
Good job, dude.
Yeah. Great. Any other thoughts or questions for Neil on his picture?
What lens would you use then? I'm just curious.
A zoom lens. I think it was set at about a normal focal length.
So for you and your portraiture, what do you consider normal? 85, 105?
Well, for two people like that, you know, on a 35 millimeter camera, it'd be like a 50 millimeter lens.
Okay.
And I suppose I could look into the metadata and figure out what it is.
Mhm.
But I'm using I don't really, you know, want to spend a lot of money on digital stuff, so I have kind of an inexpensive camera. When it came out, it was expensive, but like computers, you never buy the latest and the greatest when you wait till they, you know, a couple of notches down. So, and it's what they call a super zoom camera or a bridge camera, and the lens is not interchangeable.
Hmm. Okay.
And, but it zooms from the equivalent of 24 millimeters to 600 millimeters.
Wow.
And it's a mirrorless camera. I also like to use it for video, and I make a lot of video of horse shows and events like that.
Mhm.
And so I can go from super wide, the horse comes close to me, I can turn it to 24 millimeter, but then when it's, you know, further away, I have a long telephoto that can reach up.
Yeah.
Most of the SLR cameras you can't get a lens that will do that. It's either super wide to normal or normal to long or whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they do, but they're generally pretty soft lenses, right? I mean, they're not gonna be the sharpest lens in your bag, cause there's a lot of glass in there, but,
To me, it's not sharp anyway, no matter what you do.
yeah.
I mean, it's a matter of, doing the math.
I have a hang up about films personally, because I grew up with film and using primes,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't abandoned that. But I have to admit, like my brother Klaus shoots a lot of outdoor and landscape stuff, and his Nikon's a big, full frame. I think it says 24 to 70 or something.
Mm-hmm, that's a standard zoom length.
It's a really big piece of glass, and
Yeah.
it's expensive. It's some beautiful stuff, but
Yeah.
but I still like shooting the primes.
Yeah.
I really do.
Primes are great, man. They're super sharp, they're lightweight, there's all kinds of reasons to shoot with primes.
And I'm fairly new to digital, but I share Neil's, I'm sharing more and more his wait and buy something that's a good price. When I was a film guy, which was a 30, 40-year period, new products would come out, would seem to me on a cycle of 5 to 10 years
Right.
before a new model would come out.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like months, 5 months, 5, 6, 7 months. The Fuji X100 that I took this with,
Mm-hmm.
they had 4 models of it in what, 5 years? I mean, congratulations to their marketing, but woe be to all the customers who bought Model A, B, C,
Oh, yeah.
and G.
Yeah.
A lot of products
Mhm.
on the line. I'm
Sure.
kind of fed up with it.
Yeah.
I buy trailing edge, I buy a lot of used.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think my experience with equipment has been that camera people fall into 2 categories. You either got the guy that looks at it like a carpenter looks at his hammer,
Yeah.
and just beats it up and uses it up because he's gonna go buy another one.
Yeah.
He's making his living with it, it's just a tool,
Right.
and he's not emotional about it. And then a lot of people, particularly hobbyist people, that's a sizable investment. I mean, you spend $1,000 on a lens, you're probably gonna try to take care of it. And I've bought some used stuff for half to a third of the original
Yeah.
cost, and it looks like it just came out of a freaking store,
Yes.
and it works great.
So,
Yeah,
I
so
say that what they say about rifles is, one guy can have a rifle and go to a war with it, it looks like it's just been out hunting a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy can have a rifle, go out hunting a couple times, looks like it's been.
Yeah, the war, yeah.
So I've had really good luck with that, and I'm the same way. I buy trailing edge, so I wait for the next model to come out, because I know I can get a good deal on the thing that's
Oh, yeah.
state of the art today.
Yeah.
So, of course, I shoot Canon, but when the 5D Mark IV came out, everybody wanted to offload their 5D Mark III,
Three,
so
which
they
is-
had to have the latest, greatest thing.
Yeah.
So I got one for half the price that it cost new, and it only had 1900 shutter actuators
Wow.
on it, which is nothing.
And it's still a brilliant camera, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Where do you,
good on you.
Why wouldn't you do it?
Where do you
Mhm.
buy a lot of stuff? Do you have any particular favorite?
I've bought camera gear 1 or 4 places, either Adorama, B&H. I'll buy some stuff from Amazon, not a lot. And then I've had some good luck in some of the photography-specific forums, just buying for private individuals, if they have some ratings or, people have some experience with them, tell them I'm reasonably, I've never gotten jacked on a camera deal. I've never had anybody hose me up, And I sold, matter of fact, I just sold a girl a camera last week, and she, on the way over here, she messaged me and said, "Oh, this is wonderful, I love it, it's perfect." So,
Yeah,
try
good.
to give back,
Yeah, I've only had one bad lens, used lens purchase experience, but sent it right back, said this copy can't get it sharp, and sent another one, it was great, so.
And I've had, with Adorama in particular, I've had, if you pay attention to their ratings,
Mhm.
they've never lied about it. So if you stick to the top 2 or 3 grades of
Mhm.
what they say, you'll pay a little more for that stuff. But I mean, another $50, and I know I'm getting something that's pristine, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, they're pretty nice to deal with.
Yeah, they've done good by me. So.
Right.
I haven't been to New York for a long time, but I used to go to the shows, the big show in Jet. Every year I had a couple of things that I was developed lighting, and I used to work at the Saunders booth and the Flash Clinic and I got to meet all kinds of people, they were captains of the industry up there. And the most important thing I read, I can't remember who said it was, there's more money in selling stuff to photographers than there is in photography itself.
If you wanna make a small fortune in photography, start with a large fortune.
Yeah, something like that.
Alright. This
All
is
right.
me.
Let's talk about your picture, Nick.
Let's talk about me.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you the brief story, because I don't have the technical depth of knowledge that some folks do. About a year ago, no, more than a year ago, I guess, I was watching something by, I believe it was Matt Kloskowski, if I remember correctly, on YouTube. You know who Matt is? He's one of the
Yeah, I don't follow him religiously, but
the Kelby guys. He's a Photoshop guy. You know, I watch a little bit of his stuff. And he said, you know, one thing about it is, he says, you know, you can only take so many good pictures of kind of dull stuff. He said, if you want to take great pictures, you got to go to great places. So
that's true.
It kind of worked on me a little. I said, well, man, you know, I want to go someplace really cool to take some nice images. So I started looking around, and Iceland seemed to be the thing. So I just got in my head, I want to go to Iceland. Well, a friend of mine who's out in Charlottesville now, a fellow named Travis Oney, who's a pretty good photographer in his own right, had been to Scotland, I think, the year prior. And so I reached out to him on Facebook. I said, hey, Travis, I know you went on this photo tour thing to Scotland. You know, how was that? Tell me about it. I'm kind of shopping something. I think I want to go to Iceland. And so he wrote me back and said, well, you know, as a matter of fact, Iceland was the next thing on my list. Why don't we collaborate? He says, the guy that did my Scotland trip also does an Iceland trip. I'll reach out to him, yada, yada, yada. Well, then I start throwing it out to a few folks, and Daniel jumped on, and Gene Catalano jumped on, and a couple of, so it ended up basically being five of us from the Virginia Beach Photo Fanatics, and then the lady from New Jersey who will probably never speak to me again. And so it all came together over a period of about a year, maybe 15 months or something like that, and we flew to Iceland and met this fellow, super nice guy, tooled around Iceland for 9 days taking pictures. The unfortunate, this was in the middle of September. The unfortunate thing was the weather wasn't very cooperative. So most days when we were there, it was kind of dreary. We got more than our fair share of rain and that kind of thing. There were one or two occasions where we had some clearing for an hour or two, and there were some really nice shots came out of that. And to be honest with you, I probably got 20 or 25 pictures from that trip that I'm really pretty pleased with. But you know, this is the wall hanger. This is the one I put in my office at work. And this was kind of a crappy day, as you can tell from the sky, that we were out, and you probably know, this is not Yokosuka, I don't think, glacier, but it's one of the glaciers.
It's on the backside of town.
Yeah, you looked it up, you did the research.
Just
Anyway,
gonna ask you, that's a glacier, isn't it?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
glacier. So we jump out and we walk up to kind of the edge of this thing, and there's a lot more there, obviously, you can tell from the crop, but we walk up to this thing, and it's the same sort of feeling that I had when I walked to the edge of the Grand Canyon for the first time. You know, you're just kind of awed by the scale of the thing. You know, it's just really hard to get your mind around how big something like that is until you're standing there staring at it. So, you know, I waited a little bit, and people were kind of milling around, and there were people kind of walking up and down toward this thing, and so I stood back, and of course, a DSLR, I got a full-frame camera, and I was shooting a 17-40 lens that I bought used just for this trip. And so I'm up there, and I had my tripod set up and all that stuff, and I'm just kind of looking around, and I shot some frames for Panorama and was goofing around. But I kind of waited because, you know, just to take a picture like this and not to have anything to give it scale didn't make sense to me. So in a lot of the pictures I shot in Iceland, whereas a lot of people would shoot landmarks or something to try not to have people in them, if it was something like that, I would try to have a person in the picture to sort of give it some sense of scale. So you probably can't see it very well, but there's a little tiny bump down there. There are two folks standing right at the edge of that thing in the lower left that give you some sense of how big this thing is in relation to them. And because the sky was kind of featureless and there wasn't that much interesting going on color-wise, but there was a lot of blue in the thing, and the ice had a lot of blue, and there was a lot of black in the ice because there the island is basically volcanic. And so as the ice grates and rubs across this thing, and the glacier creeps along, it picks up a lot of this black volcanic stuff. So there's a lot of blue and black in that you wouldn't really think there was.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got it back, and every night I'd go back and download things and play on my computer, and I really forced myself to use Lightroom on this trip, though I'm more comfortable in Photoshop usually. So I pulled this thing in, and I started goofing around with different crops, and I had the frames that I'd shot like a sequence for Panorama, but this is one frame that I just chopped the top and bottom. That's a 3-to-1 crop, and I just chopped the top and bottom off. I just like the way that looked.
Mhm.
And I think it gave enough of, you can see the stuff going on the left where it's kind of creeping around that way, and then the stuff kind of calving off the chunks of ice down there, and the people in the frame. I was just real pleased with kind of the layout of the thing, you know, the position of everything, and sort of, I like that panorama look because
Yep.
there was nothing much else going on in the sky, and the foreground was not particularly interesting, so I just chopped them off. And the only things I really did to process the thing was I probably hit it with a little bit of clarity, and I tried to dehaze it a little bit in Photoshop, just to, it kind of bumped the contrast a little, I guess, is what you do in there, because it was a little featureless otherwise, but, you know, that's the one that I ended up getting printed on metal, and I sit there and look at that every day in my office, because it just kind of, it sort of encapsulated the trip for me, because that was the sort of thing that we saw almost every day, and I think you'd agree with me, you know, around every corner, there's something else that you just like, wow, man, look at that, you know, so, it's one of those things.
Some of the icebergs that glaciers my buddy and I saw in Alaska years ago, get close to like a blue topaz.
It's so beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've got pictures where we went to the lagoon where these big chunks of stuff actually calve off, and it is, that ice is such a rich blue. I mean, you would look at it and say, well, man, you goofed around with that in Photoshop, but that's the color. I mean, that's the way it looks.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of volcanoes in there.
It's one big one that's supposed to erupt, and it's 10 years overdue or something like that. 10, 20 years overdue right now.
Yeah.
And once it blows, it's supposed to take out the south side of the island completely.
Yeah, there's a lot of volcanic activity. That tended to be more north and west of where we went. We landed in Keflavik, which is where the international airport is, and that's the westernmost part of southern Iceland, and then we essentially went 300 miles over 9 days across the
How
southern
far
part of
is
Iceland.
Reykjavik from here?
Reykjavik is about 30 miles from where you land in Keflavik. And then we basically went all the way to the easternmost southern part of Iceland, which is Estrahorn and Vesterhorn, these big mountains and stuff, and then we worked our way back. The day we came back was pretty interesting because of course everything is metric and euros and European and all that, so the guy, we were hopping in the van that morning, he says, well, the winds are projected to be 30 to 40 meters per second. Meters per second don't mean anything to me, so we're like, huh? He says, wait a minute, and he looks, he says, well, that's about 80 to 90 miles an hour. Dude, so we're driving right along the coast in a van, which has the drag coefficient of the Kelvinator. You know, I mean, we're driving a big square box down the road. And as we're coming along, all of the mountains and the features are on our left side, which happened to be the side of the van I was sitting on. I'm looking at these little waterfalls that come over the cliff faces, and they're blowing backwards. The wind's blowing so hard, the water ain't falling, it's rising. It's going straight back up the hill. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Point of interest, just a few days ago, I think it was New York Times, which I buy almost every day, had an article about new favorite destinations in Reykjavik. It used to be a place you change planes,
Yeah.
you know, across Atlantic, and now it's become a tourist, very big tourist
Right.
destination.
Pro tip, if you're going to Iceland, I'll give you a pro tip, okay? It is the land of the $20 hamburger. Everything in Iceland is, we spent $1,000 eating for a week in Iceland. We didn't eat fancy. We had burgers and fries and ate at the hotel. Everything in Iceland is ridiculously expensive. If you want a pair of hiking shoes like this in Iceland, be prepared to spend about $450. It's the most expensive city in Europe. Reykjavik is the most expensive city in Europe. So on an average meal, my wife went with me, so an average meal we were spending somewhere between $80 and $100. And we weren't eating fancy, we were eating bowls of soup, cups of coffee, that kind of stuff. I've got a picture that I took one night of a burger and fries that I paid 32 bucks for. everything's imported.
Yeah, input.
You know, the vegetables they grow
Mhm.
have to be hydroponic or, you know, greenhouse type stuff.
Mhm.
And it's just, and frankly, their currency crashed, they had some government issues and
Yeah.
stuff, so they're taking full advantage
Yeah.
of the tourist trade.
Sure.
And the other downside of that for photography for us was that you literally have trailways, bus loads of people rolling into these places. So there's a kind of an iconic shot that we spent a little time getting of a little church with a red steeple on a hillside in a little town called Vic, a little village. And there were just busloads of people milling around this thing. So we had to wait a good long time, and I had to Photoshop some folks out. I never could get a completely clean shot of this place, except to go in after the fact and eliminate some things.
Yeah.
So, you know, the place is really overrun. There were one or two places, there's a, this is Skagafos, the big one. We had to go out at dawn.
Now, were you
We
there
got
during the busy time of the year or tourist wise?
Tourist time.
Yeah, September though is really, it's starting to taper off though. It's not summer or not, you know. So September starts to taper off. But yeah, the place is absolutely overrun with tourists. Yeah.
All right, Valerie, tell us about yours.
Right. Let's see. Well, this photo, it's not my, you know, it's kind of hard to choose a photo, you know, the favorite.
Mhm.
But, and this one is not the best in terms of quality and sharpness, but I chose this photo because it was the first time that I went to a maternity hospital to take a photo of newborn, and I was so involved of that with that atmosphere of love, of curiosity. You know, I was waiting in the waiting room with the family, and I was like so excited with them. And I don't know how it works in America, but in Brazil they take the baby from the delivery room to another room where they give the baby's first bath, and there is a big window where the relatives can watch this process. And I couldn't get into the room. I couldn't see I couldn't get into the delivery room as well. I wasn't able to get there. But I took this picture when the nurse told the father, just beside her is the father, the new father. The nurse told him, choose someone to come into the room. And then he chose his grandmother. And then she got into that room like so excited. And then she took the baby and looked at everyone with this face, you know. And I think this face tells everything, you know, about what she's feeling.
And you got
And-
grandma's right eye on there too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's why, and I love this kind of picture when we can. Sorry about my English, guys.
You're great.
I understand much more than I speak. Sorry about that. I really love this kind of picture where we can see what they are feeling. I mean, like spontaneous pictures. I love that,
Mhm.
and that's why I choose this one.
It's a very natural picture with her, the grandmother and the father. It's a very natural picture. Nothing, you can tell nothing posed.
Yeah.
Nothing posed. That's all I enjoy right there.
So you shot this through glass?
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks great for being shot through glass. Now it explains. I can see like a little tiny shadow above his head, and maybe that's
Yeah, I was
like
looking at that
in-
almost like it was motion blur or a shadow cast by a flash or
Yeah.
something like that.
But, you know, for this kind of shot, none of that matters.
Yeah,
Like you were
that's
saying,
right.
technical accuracy, be damned,
This is
because
emotion.
this is all about capturing a moment in life, and so all the technical accuracy in the world doesn't improve this shot. It's capturing the emotions and this moment that you know you can't reproduce. So great on you.
And that's why I like to take, I was working in Brazil with families, taking pictures of children and parents, and I like to work with them because from children you can always get from them the best. I mean, they are spontaneous, you know. know? You don't need to tell them to make a pose or something. They are spontaneous all the time, so that's why I like to take photos of children, and that's it. And I was very afraid when I left the hospital. I was afraid, like, Jesus, there was so.
It's why I like stills rather than movies. Still and capture it.
Now, I got a question for you. Was you able to give the father the picture, a copy of the picture?
Yeah, of course
Okay.
he has. He has. And I didn't use a speed light, a flash, and I was afraid because my camera, you know, when I have to upper my ISO, it starts being very noisy.
Oh, yeah.
And and I don't like it. But so I was really afraid. And actually, if you zoom in, you can see a lot of noise in there. But you know, that's what I had in the moment. So
Well, again, this is not about technical
Yeah.
perfection, this is about capturing a moment.
Yep.
It's funny what you talk about children and their kind of, you know, their honesty and, you know, all of that, because they haven't learned to be inhibited yet.
yeah.
So they're just who they are, they don't have all of that stuff about being, you know, inhibited, and that's why when we get older, we need alcohol.
Good, very nice. Very nice. You have some more from this same sequence? Some more shots from this?
Yes, I have, but I didn't bring it. You know, I didn't want to talk too much. But I have some nice shots from this hospital as well. And when I was really surprised when I saw the pictures, when I went home and put them into the computer, and I said, oh, that's good. Not so bad. Because I was really afraid about the light, you know. There wasn't enough light for my camera. And I learned some stuff on that day. When you, actually, I already knew it, but I never like care about it. But when you, I settle up my camera to 3 for the most, to the bigger aperture, which was from, that lens was 3.5. And when you zoom in, like I used a zoom lens, this lens, the aperture goes from 3.5 to
So you have very
no, sorry, the
lens.
aperture, no, sorry. The focus distance, no. How to say that?
Focal length.
Focal length goes from 18 millimeters to 200 millimeters. And
You
so
end up around 5.6 or 6.3 at the long end then.
no, when I zoom in, I was using 3.5 aperture. But when I zoom in and change for 50 or 60 millimeters, the camera automatically changes the aperture as well.
Right.
You know, it goes to 8 or something like this, and then the picture becomes a little bit darker. And I didn't figure it out, you know. So I just knew it when I saw the pictures. You know, I just forgot to settle up my camera again and stuff like that. And now I always care about it. You know, like I have to if I zoom, I have to change the aperture.
Well, if it's on an automatic exposure, it takes that into consideration. You don't have to worry about it.
What?
If,
The aperture change,
yeah, you don't have to.
it compensates for it.
Yeah, if it's on an automatic, the camera measures it and compensates for it.
You mean if it's an analogic camera, it doesn't change the aperture?
No, if it's an automatic exposure. We use
You're one of
the
the
camera
automatic modes.
if you use it in manual.
But I was using the manual mode.
Yeah, and then you have a lens that changes aperture, then you have to compensate for it. But if you use the camera in automatic, you don't have to worry about that.
Oh, yeah, but got it. I understand now.
Usually it would just slow your shutter down some.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, one of the differences, I've got a little mirrorless camera to play with now. One of the differences with mirrorless and DSLRs or SLRs when I started out with film cameras was, if you see the picture, you didn't get it. 'Cause if you're looking through the, if you're looking through the viewfinder and you see the thing you wanted to shoot, you didn't get it because the mirror wasn't blocking your view.
Right.
You know, so when you catch those things sometimes, and I get a kick out of people who get real hung up on like, oh, this camera takes 10 frames a second, you know, and frames per second and all of that stuff, because
I fall asleep when they talk about what a great movie camera is, still camera. Oh my goodness.
but if you're shooting at 1/1000th of a second and you get 10 frames in a second, you miss 990 thousandths of what happened.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, not so good.
Good. Well, guys, these were some really amazing pictures. I could tell everybody here has got a great eye and great talent. So, around the room, what are your plans for outdoing yourself in 2018? Starting with Nick.
Well, it wouldn't be hard to outdo myself. I don't have any more big trips planned. My thing right now is I just really need to get out and shoot more. I just don't do it enough. I've got a grandbaby living with me now, and we work full time. I mean, it seems like we've always got something to do or someplace to be. And what I really need to do is on the weekend just get up and just go out and do some stuff that doesn't have anything to do with any of that. You know, I just haven't done enough. Because I need to practice, frankly. I mean, photography is like anything else. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. It's easier. It's kind of like I play pool, you know, and you guys say, man, you're lucky. I say, yeah, the more I play, the luckier I get. So you just have to, the more pictures you take, on balance, the better the quality becomes, because you just refine, just like you said, you know, you learn things as you go, and you get better as you go along. So, so I think some famous photographer said your first 20,000 shots are the worst.
The worst, yeah.
And so, and it's just doing more of it for me, I think. I've got a pretty good grasp of the technical, but that means nothing if you don't get out and execute.
That's why you need a Sony A9, right? You get 20 frames a second, you get through those first 20,000 in a weekend.
Yeah,
you make a really good photographer after that. Yeah, right, exactly. How about you, Daniel?
Do a lot more traveling. I'm gonna try to get out a lot more this year. Actually, shoot more people. Get in more portraits and fine tune my astrophotography and my landscape this year. That's my biggest goal: is shoot more people, travel, and fine tune my landscapes and night stuff a lot better than last year.
Great, fantastic. How about you, Neil?
I have to go back and print and reprint up a lot of stuff that I've done over the years. Some many that I've never printed, and also I have a little studio set up in my garage. I'm kind of in a remote area there in Creeds, but I want to start doing some portraits of war people with the 8x10 camera.
Oh, wow.
I've got plenty of flash, and then the right lens for the camera, a couple of right lenses for the camera, and also do more in the 4x with the 4x5 too.
Nice. I shot a 4x5 once back in college and loved it. Just didn't have the funds to buy that kind of film back in the day, and I'd love to get into a medium format digital camera, but I know. I can't ever justify it.
Well, you can buy if you don't have to have it today, or in 2 minutes, you can buy a medium format film camera.
Yeah.
They got some really nice films out now. There's the Ektar 100 film. And I took there's not much difference between a 6x9 roll film and 4x5. The biggest difference is between 6x9 roll film and the 8x10 camera. But a good roll film camera holds the film flatter, and the emulsion is thinner, so the result is pretty much indistinguishable from a sheet film and 4x5, especially with the new films that I have today. And then so I scanned that and I got a question, maybe, you know, you probably know the answer to it, I can't figure, I don't, I can't figure it out. Anyway, so I scanned a 6x9 color negative, and, I have a Navy surplus UMax scanner that, it does 3,000 DPI down the middle, of about a 3.5 inch strip down the middle. If I wanna do a whole 8x10, it's only like, 1,500.
Oh, mhm.
But, it'll do 3,000 DPI down the middle, so I scanned a color negative at 3,000 DPI, and, it made a 96 megabyte JPEG. So, I took that to Walmart, I thought this is gonna kill the computer. But I put it in, and it handled it no problem, because the guy there doesn't know anything about his computer or anything, and made me a nice, he made me a nice, 12x8.
Do you think
12
the
by
machine
18.
reduced it automatically?
No, I haven't ripped it, no, I don't think so. But we recently, we've been using some labs to scan the stuff, and they're supposed to be scanning it at, it looks to me like 3,000 DPI, because the scan is, or almost, because the scan is 5,000 pixels by 7,000 pixels.
Hmm.
But the JPEG that comes back from the lab is only, you know, like 7 megabytes or something. So I'm wondering, the one that I did, I had a lot of spotting, and I didn't retouch it, but I cleaned it up a lot. And is it true that every time you open and close it, it gets bigger as a JPEG?
No,
No?
no.
Well, I don't know why if I scan it at 3,000, I get a 96 megabyte JPEG, but when I send it to the lab and they scan it at almost 3,000, it's only, you know, like 7 megabytes.
Well, it depends on their, JPEG has a number of different compression rates. And so depending on what compression setting, because you can actually have lossless compressed JPEG, but most people don't use it because,
Well, whenever I work on mine and save them, I use I use Linux and it's free software. And it gives you the choice, save it at 91%, or you can move it up to 100 and
Right.
save it at 100%.
you can save it lossless and do that. So, but what you're getting back from the lab, I'm sure they're not giving you lossless compression.
I gotta do that next time I need passport photo. Take them 100 meg JPEG, say here, print this out,
Yeah.
this big.
Yeah, good luck with that, Nick. How about you? Got any big plans for how to
Well,
outdo yourself this year?
I could easily outdo myself, because I've done so poorly the last few years. I've been kicking and screaming into digital, just because of I was intimidated by it for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And film was getting harder and harder to do,
Mm-hmm.
to get good results with. So, I didn't solve my dilemma one bit. I want to try to do better in both film and digital. And I think I've reached a point here recently where I stopped looking at new gear and got better with using my older model digital stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Digital is simpler to take photos, but it's a hell of a lot more complicated to do it right from the film. I think, because you have so many different variables, like little buttons you can hit with your big hands and knock exposure compensation dials off. And I do housekeeping on one of my cameras the other day, and I found about 4 things how to not set right. It would never happen with me in a film camera. But while I'm doing this, while being newlywed to digital, I'm kind of having an affair with film. In fact, this guy next to me convinced me a while back to buy another old film camera. I bought a 6x9 Fuji, and I love it. It's an old, beautiful condition. He found it. bought it. And, gosh, how come I never had one of those before? You know, it's a lot of work to shoot with compared to a digital. I wanna take it one step further, at least scan the negatives, develop them, have them scanned, maybe even build a darkroom.
Well,
House. He's got a darkroom to die
Mhm.
for.
well,
He's had it for years. Have you ever not had a darkroom? How long you had a darkroom in every house you've lived in?
Well,
2 years?
well, when I first came to Virginia Beach in 1991, and I did not have a lab. And
Oh, really?
and so I thought, well, I'll do color then, I'll do color transparency. So, and with the 8x10 camera. So I went out, I drove around about 700 miles or something, and never took the camera out of the car once. It's amazing how little there is when it's $6 a sheet and $6 a process.
yeah.
But I did,
Uh-huh.
lots of black and white work, and what I used to do was, I'd use the Ilford, XP2 film, which is a color, it's a black and white film that uses the C41 process. And, so I do that black and white, XP2 film and send it to a lab, and, then I guess, I was able to get some of it processed here at, used to be a place over there at 5 Points. What's the name of that?
I probably bought a film, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's over on Chesapeake Boulevard.
Right,
Anyway,
right.
and then I make contact prints in my bathroom.
Hmm.
And, so I still have, a number of those prints, and I work around the fishing boats in Pocosin and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. But as soon as I could have get a lab, I put one up.
Great.
Any of you remember a lab on 21st Street? I think it was called PCL.
The only lab I know on 21st Street was Richmond Camera.
Yeah, Richmond.
No, this is way before that.
Hmm.
Anybody remember Mason's Camera on Bodetark Street?
I moved here in '95, and I had put away all my 35 millimeter gear
This is the 60s.
years before. So
I was in grade school.
yeah,
He makes an interesting point though, when it's $6 a sheet and
Oh,
$6 a
yeah.
throw to print.
yeah,
You know, that's the thing that kind of gets lost with digital imaging is
Yes.
that people spray and pray.
exactly.
You know, and back when you had 24 or 36, well, I started out with 35 millimeter film cameras, but when you had
Right.
24 or 36, and it was going to take you maybe 3 days if you're quick and a week if you weren't to
Mhm.
get back the prints and know what you actually got,
Yeah.
you used a lot more discipline. And now people, you know, I kind of consider myself fortunate because I learned on fully manual film cameras, and so I had
Mhm.
to understand all of that stuff. And so if nothing on my digital camera works right now, I can still take a manual photograph and understand what I'm doing
Why,
to make that
right.
happen.
Mhm.
Whereas people now, you know, you put it on the little green box and you just go brrrr like this and say,
Yep.
oh, look, I got one good one out of 800. And,
Mhm.
you know, and so all of that discipline is lost. And a lot of people that you watch now, pros, because I watch a lot of video and stuff on YouTube about photography. And one of the things that you sort of hear over and over again, if you want to get better, shoot less. Take
Mhm.
less pictures
Also-
Yeah.
because you'll discipline yourself to
Yeah.
take better pictures.
Sure.
A point I wanted to make earlier, and I'm just saying this for the benefit of everybody here, because it happened to me. Neil may not agree with me on this, but I never shot Zooms before the digital came along. And I bought these point and shoot, like Nikon, good Canon, Canon G, this and that. I had a handful of them, and I got sloppy picture making, constructing, because of the zoom. I'd never had a zoom, and I didn't realize it what was happening to me, but I was shooting where I was standing, and I'm off of it. I'm over it. I'm done with the zoom. I'm back to a fixed focal length, even if I have a couple of them in my bag.
Mhm.
Fine, and walking around thinking in terms of the angle field of view of that prime.
Yeah.
And it's been for me very beneficial to get back to that.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. You know, not only do you have to zoom with your feet, but because you are moving, you have a tendency to move left and right, and you might find a very different composition that's much more powerful than what you saw from far away and zoomed in with using your lens. So, yeah, I'm all for, you know, shooting primes whenever you can and make it worthwhile and, you know, use the right tool for the right occasion. This kind
In
of.
fact, what I've really gotten fond of is putting on a lens on a camera, and the one with Fuji is fixed lens, and just taking it out and nothing else. How liberating.
Yeah,
Mhm.
don't give yourself too many options, just work with what you got.
Yeah. And you're not hauling around a ton of equipment and heavy glass and thinking about changing lenses and missing the moment and all that. It's like you've got what you got, and this is what you're gonna do, and you work with that tool in hand, and it's great.
Well, to your point, when we were in Iceland, because there were gathering people there, what will tend to happen is you'll get a collection of people at one point to try to take, you know, a photo of something pretty picturesque. So you got like 40 people standing in a fairly small area, and I'm the guy that says, I wonder what it looks like from over there. And I just take off and go up I go
Right.
where nobody else is standing, because look, 40 other folks are gonna get that shot.
Right.
And that's fine, and probably one or two of us will get it, you know, that was the other thing I liked about my picture, is I don't think anybody else took that picture. But, you know, I'm like, I'll stand back, I'll look where everybody's kinda getting jammed up, and then I'll start looking around and saying, okay, I wonder what it looks like over there, and I'll be the only guy standing there.
Yeah.
And not only do I not have to contend with people being in my way, but I'll get it from a different perspective, and then good to see everybody. Sorry I'm having to bust out of here, we gotta go do the grandbaby thing.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, good to see you.
See you soon, Nick.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
So how about you, Valerie? What do you got planned to outdo yourself this coming year? I should say this year.
Wow. Now we have a big country to explore, like USA.
There is a lot to explore here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking about, we are planning to travel a lot
Mhm.
this year, hopefully.
You got any destinations you want to share with us?
Not yet, like something, of course, the how can I say, most, the favorite places like New York, Grand Canyon, but we don't have we didn't choose the,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Destination yet? Okay.
and then, and that's all. We are planning to do this year.
All right.
I think I'm going to photograph only about travel. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, I like it. Last year I had some shots in nice places. I didn't bring it because last year, 2016, I didn't bring it. It wasn't the subject today. But I have some nice shots that I took in some travels in 2016, and I like to photograph when I'm traveling.
Mhm.
You always have, you don't have just a picture, you always have some history to tell about it,
Right.
and that's nice.
Mhm.
Do you work professionally in photography, or is it just a hobby?
Yes, actually, I've been interested in photography for 6 years, something around 6 years. Yeah, but I worked 1 year as a photographer in Brazil, photographing families, and that's all I have of experience. But I like both. I like to photograph children and travel.
Great. I think one of the first of these workshops that I started doing when I moved in here, we talked about travel photography, because these guys were planning their trip to Iceland, and I was planning a trip to the West Coast, and so we were just kind of chewing through things like, you know, what to bring and what not to bring, things to think about, you know, especially if you're traveling with family. They may not be as interested in photography as you are, how to find that balance, and so, you know, it's a interesting thing. You know, you guys had a dedicated trip that was designed for photography, so you had the kind of the luxury of having everybody focused on that. I think, you know, a lot of times when you're out on vacation or traveling with other people, you kind of have to balance your desire to capture every moment with everybody else's need to have you participate in the trip as well.
Sometimes my husband complains, come on, you know, like, let's do something, stop taking pictures.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you have to. You gotta let it go sometimes. Good on you. For me this year, I want to do some more creative composition work. This last year, I've done a lot of family portraiture and product photography and just a little bit of travel, not much. But I have a lot of really interesting creative concepts in my head, and now that I've got studio space that I can actually build more complex sets and kind of explore some more creative things, so I've started submitting to some like fashion magazines, you know, for more complex composition things, and working with some of the models that I've worked with in the last couple of years. A few of them have kind of risen to the top, and really, I know I can work with them well, and they can get it, and they can work the concept. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve this year is coming away with a couple of those really interesting things. So.